Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today is the second installment of this mini-series where I undertake the challenge of 3D printing a 15-foot dragon. In the previous video we explored how the creation of the concept art helped to establish some of the basic design elements. Today we'll be taking that information and translating it to a 3D printable model from which we can then begin doing some test prints. Although I did purchase a license of Maya many years ago, I have since switched over to Blender and have been using it for the past 5 years with great satisfaction. By using both the software and Cura, I found a fairly efficient workflow when creating my 3D models. I use Blender to create the models and I use Cura to both print them as well as find issues within the mesh. Cura is very good at highlighting broken areas in the mesh and makes it easier for me to find issues which could prevent the 3D prints from succeeding. It's for this reason that before I even print, I'll often simply open up the file to double check that everything is in order. As witnessed by my gray hair counter, on some occasions I do regretfully get lazy and skip the process, and that always turns out great. So to start things off, I'll often look at my notes on the project and have those either printed out or on a separate screen while I work. By looking at the initial designs, I will essentially break down the shapes in my head to ones which are easier to model. Essentially, I'll look at the vertebrae design and see that the closest primitive is that of a cylinder and use this as my base from which I'll create my model. This process is very similar to how a professional artist will break down a subject matter prior to drawing a person or object. In this case, I took the cylinder and removed the bottom portion so that I was left with the remainder of the mesh. From this point on, I started working on the general shape to make sure that these were as close to design as possible. Now I did try sculpting the shape right away, but quickly ran into issues using this method, as you can see from the abomination on your screen. Thin walls simply caused too many issues, so I continued using traditional 3D modeling techniques instead. Even though I had already drawn out a design, it's important to still make improvements if the project allows for it. Therefore, I played around with the design further to see which elements could be modified to make the overall shape more interesting. When I'm happy with those portions, I can then begin adding additional details. I'll often use non-destructive modifiers whenever possible, since this allows me to return to a more simplified shape. One such modifier is the mirror modifier, which allows 3D modelers to only have to work on half of the design while the other is mirrored by software. While this workflow is very useful, it can sometimes cause problems with the geometry if not implemented properly, so it's always a good idea to double check the mesh as you work. Another great modifier is the solidify modifier, which although it can work great, it can do something like this, which is definitely not the intended result. So depending on what you're doing, you're going to want to choose the right modifier for the job. Once I had the main vertebrae done, I could then begin working on creating the full length of the dragon. To get the proper size requirements, I created a large cube which showed me the overall target dimension. This was created with the 3D printer's maximum height taken into account and the desired length. For this project, I had decided to use the CR30 since I could set up multiple prints to print all at once. I duplicated all the vertebrae. Wow. Okay, little guy. By using a lattice, I deformed it into the shape that I wanted to achieve. For the mechanical portions such as the jaw, I found that doing a quick sketch to get a couple of ideas out on paper was the fastest method to testing the pros and cons of each. But I wanted to limit the movement to just up and down as much as possible. Having a hinge would allow me to do this, however it would also make future repairs more difficult. I ended up choosing the hinge since I wanted to 3D print as much of the dragon as possible, and this allowed me to do so. In the end, however, a prototype always needs to be made to test out the mechanics and see what needs to be changed from the design. But that will be a story for another day. I hope you guys enjoyed the journey so far. If you want to support this channel, please feel free to check out the merch on my main website. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Thank you and take care.